Hey there everyone, Pal here, and welcome back. We're talking Star Citizen again, and today I wanted to give my impressions, thoughts on the Hurricane, if I would recommend buying one, what I think it's gonna, where I think it's going to fit within the larger dynamic of the combat within Star Citizen. Before we get into that, footage in the background is Hollow Knight. This is a new Metroidvania-esque game, not Metroidvania-esque, it's a Metroidvania game. It's out on PC, I think it's also on Xbox One and PS4. I'm liking it. I really am liking it. There's a big caveat coming at the end of this, but I'll explain. So it's got this awesome art design. It looks amazing. From my understanding is this was hand drawn. So somebody hand drew all of these characters, the animations and all of that, then they brought it over into the computer, and it just looks really good. It has this terrific world design that really speaks to me. There's this unknownness. Like the game just starts off, there's no instruction, it's just you're walking forward, and it doesn't tell you you're going to look for X, Y, Z, you're doing this, you're not trying to save the princess or anything, you're just exploring this world. And it's this dying world with these buried cities and lost ruins, and there's still some life in there, but the life is corrupted in some way. I love it. If you haven't noticed, it has a Dark Souls vibe to it. I was avoiding trying to come right out and say that, but the way the world is done and created does have a Dark Souls vibe. Even the environmental storytelling is Dark Souls-esque. Just everything's Dark Souls-esque anymore, so I didn't want to make that comparison, but it's the closest thing I can make. The big caveat is it has frame rate issues. Generally speaking, the game runs at 120 FPS, capped out on my monitor. I can't go any higher than that. Just fine. But every 2 to 3 minutes, there's a brief stutter. For half a second, it drops to like 1 FPS, just whoop, and then it picks right back up and goes. It's almost like there's a quick autosave going on, but it's not when you move from one screen to the other. It just happens randomly, sometimes in the middle of a jump, sometimes in the middle of a boss fight, and it's annoying. I'm running it off of an SSD. According to the forums, people running on the older platter-style hard drives are having even worse issues. It's stuttering a lot more for them. So I do recommend this if you're someone that likes Castlevania-esque games, or Castlevania Metroidvania-esque games, but be prepared to possibly have to return it if these issues prove to be too much for you. For me, like I said, it's only once every 2 or 3 minutes. It's not enough to kill me. Also, they've actually said on the forums that it's a known issue. They're working on a fix that should be out any day now. In fact, I've been reloading Steam just to see if there has been an update yet, because I expected it this week. So that might get fixed. If it doesn't, though, you might need to return it. I still think it's a pretty darn good game. I really like it. So, yeah. I also very briefly wanted to go back to the last video I did, where I talked about all the ships, why they're making more ships, and why it's justified. I made a glaring mistake in that video. I said I thought CIG was up to about 600 employees. That was wrong. For some reason, I thought that the Frankfurt office and the Texas office both had about 200 employees apiece, which would have started off about 400, plus then you have ever many are in the LA studio, and the, what's the other, Manchester, whatever the other studio is in Europe. So that's where I got the 600. Apparently, I'm pretty far off on that. It's closer to 320, 330 employees. I still think the general point, gist of that video stands. That they're spending a lot of money. This game's going to be a $150+ million game to create, so they're making more ships in part to generate more money. But they're also making more ships because it's the primary source of content within the game, and so they're going to need the ships no matter what. So it's a win-win for them to do it. They need to make the ships, they also need the money. So both things work out. It's not bad either way. You just got to be a smart consumer when it comes to it. Alright, that out of the way, let's jump into talking about the Anvil Hurricane here today. I actually am a few days late on this video, not because, well, directly because I wanted to wait on the first Q&A to come out, which came out yesterday. The big question we all wanted to know, I think, and everybody was expecting to know, was, can the turret be slaved like a Super Hornet? I think that's kind of the make or break point for me on this ship. We'll come back to that. Let's first just give initial rundown of it. Aesthetically, the ship is okay in my opinion. I appreciate the fact that it's somewhat unique looking. It does have that clear Anvil canopy, so the canopy looks a lot like the Hornet, Super Hornet, Gladius, but the rest of the ship does not look like an Anvil ship in my opinion. It looks more like a Gladius in my opinion, but with different wings than that. Something about it I just don't love though. I think it's the turret. I think the way the turret looks compared to the rest of the ship, which is very sleek and sloped, just doesn't fit right for me. That's not to say it's ugly, it's just not something I'd personally say, wow, that's a really good looking ship. But I do appreciate that it is different. The big selling point on this ship though, the big talking point though, is the hard points. 4 size 3s in the turret, 2 size 4s on the nose. That's crazy. You basically have a saber mounted on your top as your turret. 4 size 3s is what a saber carries. Plus then 4 size 3 missiles. While not a lot of missiles, those size 3s do pack quite a bit of punch. This thing has amazing alpha strike potential, meaning unloading all 4 missiles, all guns, all at once on an unsuspecting target. That's a lot of damage output if it all connects. But again, the big question was, can that turret be combined over? Because the turret's great, except we all know, trying to play the turrets in game, the turrets tend to be a pain in the butt to use. Also, it's very inconsistent. If the ship's only usable when you have a friend online to get in, or when the AI NPCs come in, then that's going to be a problem. Especially we don't know how good the AI NPCs are going to be at aiming. If those AI NPCs are like in a lot of games where they only start engaging targets, or they engage the wrong target, they shoot at some random target off on the right when there's another target on your tail shooting at you, that's not going to be good. So I wanted to make sure that the ship was able to be used efficiently by one person before I really gave my opinions on it. Okay, I'm not going to read the entire answer for what it is, but basically the short answer to will the turret be able to be slaved is yes. In fact, what they said is they're going to be trying to do it, and all ships of this size, all ships with this type of turret, are going to have the ability to be slaved down the line. I don't think that includes things like the Constellation and the Retaliator. I think those ships are just too much different, that the turrets face different ways and everything. But we're looking at things like the Freelancer, the Cutlass, possibly even the Vanguard. Those maybe would get in there, but definitely the Gladiator, this guy here, and we already have it on the Super Hornet and all that. Now, they did describe an interesting way of doing it. Right now, it's just been basically they program the line of code and say, okay, the turret it works as a gimbaled gun. Boom, done. But what they're talking about is, what they want is sort of and I'm reading between the lines here a little bit, they don't actually tell us, but it seems like what they're going for is there's going to be slots for like expanding the computer system or modifying your ship a little bit, where you can put in expansion cards. So perhaps one card would be improves the computational power of the computer, so it's better at determining incoming missiles, or one increases the sensors of it a little bit. One maybe boosts, I don't know, the engine performance. It does a better job of calculating the performance out of the engine. These are possible different cards they could be. Well, one of those would be a card that you can put in that causes the turret to slave over then to the pilot. And the reason they're doing this is it means there'll be a trade-off. Whereas someone that is flying it without the turret slaved could have something different in that slot that boosts the ship in some other way, improves the targeting of the missiles, whatever. Well, if you're doing it with the slave, that means you're using one of these slaved processors in that slot, which reduces something else down the line. That is what they're looking to do. It's not 100% confirmed, but that is definitely something they want to have for all ships with no exception. That really does put a lot of my major concerns about this ship at ease. 2 size 4s are awesome. They really are. But would you want 2 size 4s or 4 size 3s? We're just comparing what the pilot would control between the Hurricane and the Saber. I think personally I would take 4 size 3s over 2 size 4s. However, 4 size 3s compared to 6 size 3s, or 4 size 3s and 2 size 4s compared to 4 size 3s, then the Hurricane becomes definitely a much heavier hitter. So with this ability to eventually down the line slave it with some sort of trade-offs, that definitely did put a big bonus up on the ship. Other things that we learned out about the ship. So we knew from the ship page that we could see the size 2 engine, we could tell the weight of the ship, and basic calculations just weight to power to weight ratios off other ships put it somewhere between the Hornet and the Super Hornet, somewhere in that area in terms of raw performance, maybe a little bit below that, actually between the Vanguard and the Hornet in terms of performance. And that seemed pretty darn slow. What they did say, though, is the main design philosophy of this ship is hit and run. So it's not going to have a lot of lateral movement. Your thrusters or your directional maneuverment thrusters aren't going to be doing this. You're not going to be taking the ship through tight turns and stuff. It is designed to go very fast in a straight line. Hence, you come in, you hit the target, and you run right out the other side. You're going to be doing strafing runs through the battlefield rather than getting into dogfights within the battlefield. This is very vague, though. What is considered fast? Is M50 considered fast? Gladius considered fast? Saber considered fast? Is it going to be, where's it going to sit inside that area? I think for survivability, it has to be faster than the Gladius. So that way, the only ships that can really run it down would be dedicated interceptors like the M50, like the 350R. Those type ships could run it down. But at the same time, I kind of hope it falls more in line with the Saber. I would just like to see some more targets, more design that the Gladius can catch up to and fight if it takes even a long time. That's just personal preference, though. I'm a fan of the Gladius's design. I like that old workhorse type design. But we know it's not going to have a whole lot of lateral movement, all of that. We also know it doesn't have a whole lot of durability. The shields are a single size 2, I believe. And then it just doesn't have a lot of chassis or hull HP. What do I think overall of this ship? Well, I think for the initial version of the game, when this is going to come out in the next year or so, it's probably not going to have too many uses. This ship was going to probably do quite well once we have fleet engagements. I could see definite uses of this fleet as basically not torpedo boats, but fast attack, focusing down specific ships. So when you and an enemy fleet are engaged, you wait until everybody's engaged, they have their targets, they're all fighting. You then designated a priority target. You have, say, 3 to 5 of these out on the outskirts that come flying in real quick, unload on a priority target, taking out maybe the say a Hornet tracker, what's the command and control Hornet? I forget. But take out, say, like the command and control ship and then fly off and keep right on going. That could work really, really well. But you don't actually want these just right in the middle fighting in the dogfights themselves. If they do that, they might get 1-2 really good salvos off, and then they are likely going to be dead because they're going to be high priority targets. Once they're seen, if people can get behind them, they're probably going to eliminate these quite quick. So I can see that working. I also see this being very much a favorite ship for people that are looking to, well, let's just say grief. Gankers, people on those lines, or pirates, we could consider pirates. But people that are going to look to go into safer zones, areas where people, maybe newer players, people that aren't looking for PvP to go into those areas and kind of grief people, especially if they pick up the version with the LTI. This ship's going to have the ability on an unsuspecting target, firing those 4 size 3 missiles, all those guns. You're going to be able to pop most ships very, very quickly before anybody has a chance to respond. Then if you go ahead and you lose the ship, well, you have the lifetime insurance. You're going to be able to get it back at a premium cost, relatively cheap, and continue on. So I see the ship being very popular there also. So it has both that side of it plus the fleet logistics side of it. In terms of a general 1v1 fighter, I don't think it's going to be all that good. Once the enemy knows you're there, and if they're invading even a little bit, if you don't get a perfect strike on them and they manage to get behind you, you're going to be in trouble, especially if you're flying it solo. If you do have somebody in your turret, well, the turret is going to dissuade a lot of people from chasing it. 4 size 3 shooting backwards at someone behind you is going to scare a lot of people off. That's a lot of firepower. But that all comes back down to how well the AI NPCs handle the turret, or if you have a friend that can actually get into that turret. But I would not want to get into a dogfighting with this ship. Yeah, that's the general idea. Am I going to be picking one up? Well, the answer is actually probably yes, but not for the ship itself. Here's my thought process on this. The LTI, the lifetime insurance, is probably one of the best things that you can actually get. Also, the ship is currently under the war bonds, the initial release sale, so it's a little bit cheaper. It's $160. I'm looking at adding 2 or 3 more ships to my fleet. I need something that's a little bit more long range, more of a social ship, so I'm looking at the Carrack. The Carrack's a ship that's very much on my short list that I want to see in use. I also need to see how they're going to be doing planetary exploration and make sure that it's not going to be useful only for the first 3 days after a new planet's implemented into the game, and that there'll be more use for it throughout the entire lifetime of the game. So the Carrack's on my short list. The Redeemer, I love the concept of the gunboat / troop transport of the Redeemer. I like the art design of it. I like the engine design of it. But I want to see that kind. I just haven't pulled the trigger on that guy. And then I'm also interested in the Cutlass Black. I've already had a Cutlass Black. I just didn't find it to be of good value. While I love the ship aesthetically, I love the kind of more ruggedness of the Drake concept. I had to trade it up just because, for performance, for what it brought, it didn't make sense to have it when the Freelancer was $5 more, I think. So that got traded up. But with the new Cutlass Black redesign, I'm definitely considering that again. The point being, what I'm going to consider doing is I'm going to buy up a Hurricane, buy it now for $160, get LTI. Then down the line, in a year or so, when this guy comes in the game, if I find I don't actually like it, find it doesn't play my playstyle, or doesn't fit my playstyle, I then cross-chassis upgrade it to a Redeemer or a Carrack. I end up with lifetime insurance on that, and if I'm correct on how they're going to do the conversion, it's going to become a $175 ship after the initial sale release. Well, that means I can get the Carrack or the Redeemer for $15 less, because I'll have picked it up for $160 rather than $175. So that's where I'm thinking. It means I might end up keeping it. If I don't, I get something else that I'm definitely interested in with LTI. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. That's the Anvil Hurricane. I threw some screenshots up in there if you haven't seen it. It's definitely an interesting concept. I like that they're doing something a little more one-trick pony focused rather than well-rounded fighters. That definitely works, and I do think it's a unique design. Until next time, this has been Power. Thanks for watching.